Hi. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
So you mentioned Tim Heidecker and the writers' room. Eric and Tim, much like yourself, I knew more probably. I think from what you just told me, I think I knew a little bit more about their work, but I always found it really unsettling. Mm-hmm. I like them and I recognize their brilliance, but I also found, oh my God, I don't know if it's something I could recommend to like casual people.
Yeah.
But when you put it in the context of absurdism or surrealism, I suddenly went, oh yes, because they're doing the same thing, that irreverence and going for the art, like much like Kaufman, mm-hmm. the uncomfortability is the joke.
Yeah.
What is, and then you ask yourself, why am I uncomfortable? And that's the moment. Yeah. That's the art part where you go, why am I uncomfortable? Yeah. Now, some people don't want to stick around for that.
Right. Well, it's also like when you say, this is crazy, and you kind of find it funny that it's crazy.
I call it a brain tickle.
Oh, yeah.
When something like the kids in the hall, not to bring it up to my thing, but the thing I liked about the kids in the hall, I mean, I've known them since they started, but when they were doing their show, and I went, oh my God, they just did that thing that makes no logical sense, and yet it kind of does. I don't even know if I want to know why it's funny, but it's not even like, it's more like it's not even a laugh, it's like, oh no. Like, what is that?
Well, and also, I grew up watching the kids, and I was like, when they aired it in the U.S., I was like 15 years old, so my cranium was not necessarily smart in any way yet, you know? Mm-hmm. Like the adult version is a little smart.
Not to write books.
Yeah, but I watched some of their skits, and I had no idea why it was funny,
right.
But I thought it was awesome. You know?
But it's that same thing I'm getting at, though. Is like Tim and Eric have it, and I know that Tim is famously a Kids in the Hall fan, and so it doesn't surprise me that he'd be interested in this.
Yeah.
But then, so how did that introduction come about?
Oh, so my third book I had written with Black Francis from the band The Pixies, and he had suggested when I needed someone funny to help with some of the jokes, and I asked Black Francis, and he suggested Tim. And at first I really didn't know if it was gonna be the right fit, because I was thinking I really need someone that understands the Marx Brothers, and I have a feeling that this guy doesn't, didn't necessarily grow up watching the Marx Brothers. I was right. He really didn't know much about the Marx Brothers. But when I watched some of his show, I realized, well, this guy's really surreal and interesting and smart. And so when I met him, that was when I realized that he'd probably be perfect, because he was actually a really serious guy, like in person. Like he wasn't, he's considered a comedian, but he was very, to the point and very serious when we met.
Oh, yeah.
And he said, I think I could help. And he was very smart in his idea. He got a bunch of his friends together from the Tim and Eric show, a couple of which were big Marx Brothers fans, and he put them all in a room with himself and me, and we spent a couple days basically hashing out these bits that we fit into the screenplay that I had written based on Dolly's notes, and I had left these openings for the Marx Brothers bits. In fact, in Dolly's notes, he didn't write Marx Brothers jokes. He expected them to. So in his notes, he had actually written, whenever there needed to be Marx Brothers stuff, insert Marx Brothers mayhem here.
Gag to come.
Yeah. So I did that on the script too.
Yeah.
Like I wrote some of the funny stuff and the bits, but when it got kind of above my pay grade, particularly the Groucho jokes,
right.
And the sort of deeper, ongoing, like I could start a bit, about a manhole or something, and get 2 or 3 of the good one-liners in there, and then I was out. And they really helped with that. So I wrote on the script, insert Marx Brothers mayhem here, and then we had this writer's room, and we added everything that was needed. It was really great, and it was the first time actually I had seen how comedy works. That was so cool. Like I'd never been in a writer's room before. Everything I've written is even the funny stuff is just me alone, thinking something was funny. But seeing all these people together and the energy that is created from that was just like, it was awe-inspiring. It was like, I want to do more of that.
Writers' rooms are legendary.
Yeah.
Something I've learned from some of the research I've done for things and just people I've known. You hear about like the Simpsons writers' room, and you hear about the South Park writers' room.
Yeah.
And Bill Hader, comedian Bill Hader, has worked on South Park and talked about being in the room with those guys just changes his life.
Yeah.
And I know that most Hollywood movies or most films you see, they have a punch-up session. Sometimes sometimes informally and uncredited.
Right.
Patton Oswalt works on a lot of movies a year.
Right.
Used to. I don't know if he still does. Or he's talked about it. And so that's interesting that you got Tim and you got him involved. And how much of that was? How serious are they when they do that? Is it kind of? Because the joke about comedy writing is that everyone thinks they just sit there and crack jokes and light a joint and crack jokes, which sometimes is true. Certainly there are ways of working, but you don't really get a lot of consistent work out of people who are not disciplined.
It was very serious, and again, Tim was serious the whole time. He was like, the other guys would like crack up when someone would have a good joke.
You have to.
But he was mostly really dead set, straight, and it was interesting because like, there would be 10 or 15 minutes of very serious, like reading the parts and talking. But then the second the bits started flying out, there'd be these 4 or 5 minutes of just laughing and writing the stuff down and making changes. And there'd be these little moments of bursts, and then it was back to moving it forward.
I have to ask a formal question, which might bore the hell out of you guys. So you said someone's writing it down by hand? Because usually there's one guy in the room or several guys.
Yeah, there's a note
laptops.
taker.
Like
we had
one guy who's not even adding anything. He's just sitting there typing the whole time.
There was one note taker that was in the corner that was supposed to write everything down.
Usually frazzled. Yeah, because there's like five minds.
Clearly, this woman was Tim's like main, note taker in the room, because she got everything down. It was really incredible. I tried to keep up and get as much as I could, but she like totally
like a court stenographer.
Yeah, no, it was really amazing. And my favorite sort of final Tim story that closes the chapter on Tim's involvement in the project was a couple weeks ago. We did an event in Los Angeles at this really cool venue called Dynasty Typewriter.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've heard about it, but if you're ever in LA, you should totally go. It's a really amazing.
Is that Vanessa's place?
Vanessa
Ragland. Yeah.
It's
she does Sketchfest stuff as well. But
she does like.
It's becoming a legendary place
because she's kind of picked up on. Do you know the Alamo Draft House in do you know the Alamo Draft House?
Absolutely.
So it comes from Austin, but now there's one in pretty much every city.
One on mission here.
Oh, okay, cool. So so the idea being that they make movies into events, right? And so they have drinks and they have food. So Dynasty Typewriter, these very smart people, they're like, let's do that. Well, let's do that with comedy and one-person shows.
Right.
So it's like, not that they serve meals, but they have drinks, and it's that same kind of, they turn a bar night into like a show night, and into a way that artists of any level, small, medium, large, can experiment with new stuff. It's really cool. So we did an event there for the book, and I guess I didn't really think it through, but I was like, hey Tim, you want to come celebrate the book with me? We can sort of be in conversation for a couple minutes. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll do that. He's been so nice and generous through the whole thing, given that he really, did not, his main work was 2 or 3 days, but he's been awesome. So I go, I do my spiel, I did my little intro thing that I did with you guys. It was 3 times as long though, you're welcome. And then finally it was time to be in conversation. And I'm like, okay, everyone, and the place was full because Tim was there. And I was like, okay, Tim Heidecker, and everyone claps, and he comes out. And up until this very moment, I had only seen the Tim Heidecker, the non-100% Tim Heidecker.
Yeah.
I had seen the 10%.
You see him off stage.
I had seen the serious
backstage Tim. Yeah.
Not the Tim and Eric Tim Heidecker.
Right.
But he knew what he was doing. He came out onto the stage, and he was a different guy that I'd never met before. And he destroyed me. He turned me into his Margaret Dumont, and I basically was the straight man, and and I spent the next 45
Did he
minutes.
berate you? Like how
He didn't
when you say Dumont,
no, because he wasn't mean to me. That's the
Okay,
thing.
yeah,
It wasn't
yeah.
like a Groucho mean, but it was like there was no way anyone in the audience would be able to tell if he liked me at all.
Yeah.
And
How did that feel?
terrible. It was the most terrible thing. I was sweating. I was like, this is a disaster. And then I realized maybe this isn't a disaster. Maybe everyone in this audience knows what's happening here. And then I said to myself, you're just trying to make yourself feel better. No one knows what's going on. You look like a total schmuck. And it turns out that everyone in the audience knew what was going on because they knew Tim Heidecker and they knew his comedy.
Right.
And everyone thought it was hilarious. But because I was not so familiar with that, the whole time I was like, I look horrible here. But I actually didn't.
But when you roll with it,
and
it's
you
like,
just,
it's when you resist that you get worse. You dig yourself deeper, right?
He told this 80-year-old woman in the audience to fuck off, and I'm like, oh my God, this is horrible.
Yeah.
At the end, she came up and gave him a big hug and was like, that was so funny, you know?
The Don Rickles effect.
Like they got it. They all got it,
Mr.
except for
Warmth.
me. Except for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was so funny.
Now, I just want to quickly interject that this happens to me. There's one of the kids in the hall named Bruce McCullough. And Bruce McCullough is a great friend of mine and super generous and has been really behind my book and was cooperative when we did it. He invited me to his house but when we've done a couple of events, he has turned into a different person. And I realized it's like, don't get in the way of my thing. He wasn't mad at me or anything, but I had to adjust. I remember I was telling my wife, Lisa was right here. I was telling my wife, Lisa, after I said, I don't know if he likes me after that show. And then everyone else said, Dave Foley actually said, oh no, that's his style. He's a dick.
Yeah.
Right? And then you realize, they've all been doing this to each other for years.
Yeah.
I'm just the layman. I'm not really a comic. I've
Yeah.
been around comedy. I know comedy, I think. And then all of a sudden, I'm in the trenches with a comedian. That's what happens when you're in the trenches with a comedian. It's a little different than when you're backstage because everyone's a little nicer. Especially we both come from music writing backgrounds. Comedy people are generally really interested in music, so you have these great conversations.
It's true.
But then if you get in, like you said, I'm working here, kid. That's kind of what it is.
Yeah,
like,
no, that's
you brought a Tim Heidecker into this. You should take it.
He went to work, man. He went to work.
He did you a huge favor by doing that.
No, he really did. He came out on stage and he was at work and everybody loved it and it was a great. It turned out at least everyone told me it was a great night.
Just to buttonhole the Bruce McCullough thing because you are recording this.
Yes.
I honestly, I was honored that he was like putting me in the
Oh
act.
yeah.
Like,
oh no, me too.
Yeah.
Afterwards, a friend of mine who's a huge Tim and Eric friend. I showed him the video and I'm like, so tell me, what happened here? He's like, that was hilarious. You were a part of the act, And
so also you mentioned Quirk Books put this out and. We just just a minute ago. Is it Pride and Prejudice and Zombies?
Yes.
So they published that as well, which is another. It sort of is a clue that they're the kind of people who would do this.
Yeah, who would get it. Yeah, they did Pride and Prejudice.
They created a whole genre of remaking old stories, classic stories as zombie stories.
Yeah.
Which is in itself kind of surreal.
They became famous originally. How they were able to start their publishing is that the founder of it wrote those How to Survive books.
Dave Borgner? No,
I don't.
Worst case scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you. Who I actually know.
Oh, okay. Yes.
But I mean, I don't. Is he still with the company? I don't think he is.
I mean, I think he still is the.
He's the guy. Yeah. So do you deal with him?
No, but the main director tweets my tweets.
Oh, well.
About my book.
Wow.
So because he's not like running. He's behind the scenes.
Okay. That was a little bit of business gossip. Sorry.
So no, that was really great, and really excited. The book has gotten a lot of great attention. We got like 3 different NPR spots,
that's
which was
amazing.
Huge.
I hate you.
Yeah.
Just
a lot of people hate me for that. I don't know
Yeah.
how that happened. That's the one thing I was not responsible.
I should hang around with you.
Yeah.
They'll probably be good for me.
Well, I find that that's the thing. It's like I feel like that's why it's hard to pick books because you want to pick something that means so much to you that you're going to spend 5 or 6 years on it. But you also, I feel like I also find myself looking for that perfect idea that something like NPR just can't turn down. there's just no way, you know. This is the first book I've come up with for that in particular, but I am always thinking about how to get interest in the book along with why I want to write the book.
Well, earlier, and again, this compressed conversation that we had, I agreed with you about the idea of writing about something that hasn't been done because, in my case, you know, if I was to pitch a book about Bob Dylan or a book, you know, a biography of the Beatles, it's like there's a million better writers than me, and there's also a million less than good writers than me who've done this. And you're not going to really stand out, and you probably won't necessarily get a deal because whatever. So what you have to do is come up with the angle. Like I wrote a book about Long John Baldry, who's an unknown outside of a certain group of people, like big figure in the British music history of the early blues rock, and nobody really knows him except for a few people who were around, but he discovered Elton John and Rod Stewart, etc. Well,
and he was connected underneath.
So I love that. I love the underdog. You don't know this. This is the story. This is the story behind the music.
Yeah,
this isn't even behind the music. This is like the next room.
Yeah.
And then you know, so in your case, you know, like a lot of your books are kind of about like some of the other ones.
So the first one was the biography of the Pixies, and part of the reason for doing that book was that there was this incredible underlayers under them of the early scene of alternative rock back in the 80s in Boston and New York, and there was just some incredible stories to tell. Right. The second was about this guy Peter Ivers, who had a TV show in California called New Wave Theater that was on.
Does anyone know that?
Anyone know New Wave Theater?
Yeah.
It was on the USA Network, and it was the first nationally broadcast music show. And Peter Ivers was this incredible sort of center of this wheel where all the spokes led out to like some of the most important people in comedy and rock and roll in the 70s and 80s and 60s even. So I told his story, and so yeah, I love these like multifaceted, multiple layered histories that you can find all these interconnecting things. And then for my Peter Ivers book, I was able to tell John Belushi stories and Chevy Chase stories and Doug Kenny, because Doug Kenny from National Lampoons was Peter Ivers' best friend. So from doing that, I was able, and then I got to like meet all these other interesting people that were friends with Doug Kenny that led me. So that the hunt for those people and the connecting aspects are really exciting. This was a little more cut and dry, and because it was the 30s, there really wasn't a lot of places you could go as far as finding other people. But for me, with the Giraffes book, it was less about finding the connections, like with my previous book, as it was about uncovering these unknown aspects of these specific people that could unlock this untold movie. You know, what did it all mean?
It's archaeological in a way. Like
yeah.
you're brushing away dirt and finding new corners of this box, and then trying to get a crate to open it up.
Because again, lots of people have talked about the Marx Brothers, lots of people have talked about Dali, but this little niche thing that I was able to exploit into
it's detective work and archaeology and all that stuff. And I like the idea that you having done a few books have developed those life skills, which I think I can recognize.
Yeah.
The chutzpah of being able to tell them, well, maybe you should just send it to me. Like I don't have $300, just send it to me anyway. Which is like, you and I had that, again, we just, the one thing you said to me was like, we both identified with, it's like, just ask them. Just ask them. Like, people don't know that you can actually also have a good question, right? Ask them a question and make sure the question has enough of a brain hook in it for them that they go, oh, this question's interesting. This isn't the usual question.
Maybe I should ask someone else here what the answer to that question is, because I haven't heard that question. And then that gets the people talking over there, and then you're more than just, you become a little something more. It's true.
No, but I salute that, because it sounds like again there's many moments here as a biographer myself. I kind of got excited, like just the idea of like when the story takes you to the place. So you're walking into Bill Marx's place in Palm Springs, and you suddenly see this find of Harpo art on the wall. I kind of go. Like, it's like, oh my God.
But you had that moment too.
Well, I have a few moments, like, one, I think I told you that for the Todd Rundgren book, Patti Smith was one of his friends, and he produced Patti Smith Group's last album, Wave, which was the last group album. And so she agreed to meet me in Greenwich Village for that book, and I said, I just need 25 minutes. I just need 25 minutes at a place of your choosing. She said, there's this cafe I like in Greenwich Village. If you come there at this time, I'll come and I'll meet you and we'll talk. Get there, she's super nice, and she's super, wants to tell me everything. An hour and 10 minutes later, an hour and 10 minutes later, I say to her, listen, you've really, given me everything, and I know I'm going to give you the right to leave now if you want. She goes, no, but, are you done? Because I'll keep talking if you want more. And I was like, at that point, I actually said, I think I have enough, and can I email, she said, email me. So, I'll suddenly leave with Patti Smith's email address. I'm in Greenwich Village, having just had this incredible hour-long thing, and I think what I was telling you was, I walked out through Greenwich Village and some of the cobblestone streets are the same still as they were in the 60s, and I just felt this weird continuum of this is you don't get paid a lot to do this work.
No,
but
you have that moment. You have that moment where you realize you're connected to it somehow.
The same streets Dylan walked on, the
Yeah.
same streets beat poets walked on, and Patti herself walked on, and the punk rockers walked on, and all of a sudden I've just had this. No one can take that from you.
Yeah.
You mentioned David Lynch from the Peter Ivers book. Got you to meet David Lynch. Tell that story if you could.
So for my second book, I got David Lynch wrote the song from Eraserhead, "In Heaven Everything Is Fine," with Peter Ivers, and which is how I discovered Peter Ivers. And so when I cold called Lynch and got his assistant and said, I'm writing a book about Peter Ivers, and because Lynch really felt indebted to Peter for a big part of his career, because Peter actually introduced David Lynch to Coppola and thus got the gig to do The Elephant Man. That's right?
Was it Coppola or Mel Brooks?
Well, Mel Brooks and Coppola was in the room, and Coppola was involved.
Because I mean that surprised me. It's a whole
Mel
other
Brooks.
thing.
Yes,
Mel Brooks' philanthropy in the film business is similar to
yes.
But go ahead.
So I got to go and meet David Lynch, which not a lot of people do, and he invited me to come to his house, and I drove up the Hollywood Hills and pulled up, and I was invited to meet him in his wood shop where he was currently working on a new piece. He has a wood shop in his house and he does woodwork. And we sat there for a couple hours. And so it was the same thing when I left. I was in the Hollywood Hills and I got into my rental car and I was like, I'm a part of this, in this moment, I'm a part of this.
David Lynch's sawdust in your lungs. In your lungs.
Yeah. So no, it's great that's like you said, the payoff is not in the advance, it's not in the book sales. Hopefully someday it becomes that. But you try and build an arsenal of work that someday will amount to.
Yes.
And I mean, one book doesn't do it, 2 books doesn't do it, but over time and I feel I'm getting closer.
Well, I feel like I would now know you as the go-to guy for this kind of work.
Yes.
And then I would say you should talk to Josh Frank, and that's usually what happened. And I will say that it's happened to me, and that's how I know this. Someone will say, "Well, Paul Myers just did that book. Paul Myers should do that book," and or that article or something like that. And
totally.
And hopefully, like Patti Smith herself says, you just do good work, put your head down, and keep doing the work, and let the work be the thing that tells your story. And because that's what separates from someone who's just a dilettante who's just getting their name out there. You're getting your name out for the right reason.
Totally. Yeah.
And again, as you get better at it, I think you do, because of those stories that you lead to this. So suddenly you're the guy who can pull this off. I want to ask one more thing about this because I don't know how much time we have.
I think we're one more question. Yeah.
We have to go to a network commercial. But I want to ask you. So this is a graphic novel.
Yeah.
Essentially, and it's also a storyboard.
Yeah.
Is there any possibility of an adaptation to an actual movie of this, and how would that look?
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me that at the different events that I've done, and my goal was to make the movie as much as I could, and so we not just adapted the notes into a screenplay, adapted that into the graphic novel, which is the storyboard, but we have the music, and there's a whole soundtrack coming out next month with all the other songs, because in the book there's 5 musical numbers, because it's a Marx Brothers movie.
Right.
And they're written out on these double-page spreads where Groucho sings his, Lydia the Tattooed Lady type song, And so I actually sent all the lyrics to a composer friend of mine, a jazz composer, and he put together a 40-piece band and got like a full studio and recorded the whole album. And so that's going to come out in a month. And so we have the soundtrack, we have the storyboard. So the truth of the matter is, it's ready to go.
Yeah.
And so I hope, I know it's not going to happen tomorrow. I know it might not happen in 6 months, but in a couple years, at some point, I do hope that some studio exec gets their hand on the book and is like, well, this is ready to go. Let's do this one, because I really do think it would make a great either animated feature or like a CGI thing, like a Coraline type thing. I think it would be great. And
I could see it also being the story of Marx meeting Dali.
I think it could be incorporated, because that's how it's meant to.
And have a Thalberg character, and have a Lady Mare character, and
I hope.
And again, if you're tight with the estate, a lot of these things can happen probably, because that's the main problem.
The hardest part is always creating the relationship, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, and everybody's very happy with the book. The estates are really happy.
I applaud you for making that idea happen. So now this exists.
Yeah.
So no matter what happens, there's now a template, proof of concept, if you will.
Yes.
To use that term. And so now somebody could say, it's not, you've done the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
You put it all into one basket called Giraffes on Horseback Salad.
Yeah.
And now it exists for everyone to enjoy. It's also, I may sell it a little bit. I love how it's an actual hard, makes me feel like one of those little kids' annuals that you'd get when I was a kid. I used to get like sports annuals and stuff like. And it's really nice. It's suitable for gift wrapping. It's a very gift-friendly thing.
Yes.
And I think now that it exists, it could actually go out and have a life. And you did that. And I think.
Thank you so much. And thank you guys for coming and letting us talk. And if you have a couple questions, please happy to ask.
I'm sure to you guys.
I was going to say, as I'm sure you are aware, that Dali and Walt Disney had a long relationship, and they produced it in animated short. So I would think that Disney Pixar might be a good one to pitch this to.
Absolutely.
That'll be fun.
And I would love to get paid by them. That would be so awesome.
Good idea,
no, but actually, that was unfinished until 10 years ago when they finished it, and you can see it's a short, and that's another good example of Dali's attempt to be very involved with Hollywood.
Dali met Disney and somebody else while he was in Hollywood, right?
He met Cecil.
Cecil B. DeMille.
And he met
Hitchcock.
I don't know if he met Hitchcock the first time around. The first time around he met Disney, Cecil, and Harpo. And I think it was the next time he was there that he was introduced to Hitchcock. Yeah, and he actually did a lot more for Hitchcock than made it into the movie.
Didn't you tell me, or didn't your book told me? Sorry, that Dali saw the plans for Disneyland.
Yeah, he saw them before.
Like, you think about Disneyland representing sort of a kind of surreal vision of America.
Yeah.
You know?
There's these great, you can see them on YouTube, there's these great little videos of Dali visiting Walt Disney's house. And in the backyard, he had the template for one of the rides, which was the train. And him and Dali went around on the train in his backyard. It was some really cool stuff.
There's a hall of flaming giraffes.
Yeah.
And taking some of his ideas. Any more questions, though? Because I feel like I
just want to thank you for doing this. 20 years ago, I was going to college, and I was really obsessed with Dali's. And I wrote 2 term papers on Salvador Dali. One was on pop culture, where I compared Ronald Reagan with Salvador Dali. But then I also did one on film history. And I was looking around. I learned about this unreleased project.
Oh, really?
And I was trying to find it, and there's hardly anything out there. So congratulations.
What year was that?
Oh, that was sometime in the 80s. So
you know what? I bet when I think that the museum in Paris hadn't even gotten that lot yet. So because I think it was like in. Well, yeah, it was probably right around that time, actually.
Well, it was a term paper I did in the course of like 2 months. So I just basically used whatever I could find out in art catalogs.
Well, there was no World Wide Web yet to just go on and find out where the Dali Museum was and get in touch with them.
Oh my God, doing this work before the web, it's like, I remember, I just started when, I think, that's how old I am. I remember when you had to go look at microfiche.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway,
Yeah.
go back.
In the back.
So can I get the name of the museum in Paris again? I'm
Yeah.
actually going there next month for a month.
Oh, yeah.
It's a cultural study.
Oh yeah, it's the Pompidou, which is in the what district? With an M.
Montmartre?
No, that's where the Marais. It's
La
the
Marais. La Marais.
Yeah, the Montmartre is where the yes, Toulouse-Lautrec.
La Moray.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's the
But
name
yeah,
of it.
so
the Georges Pompidou Center, or Center Georges Pompidou.
you can't miss it. It's unmissable.
It was very futuristic in 1979.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's got
But
the
yeah.
external tubes outside of it. It's a beautiful building.
But it's actually the inside and what they have in there is incredible and totally worth going to. And just be sure you go on a weekday if you want to go to the libraries, because their research rooms and their libraries are extensive. It's incredible. I mean, it's like 2 floors, but it's not open on weekends. I discovered that. Because I wanted to go thank them because they helped me in such a big way. But they were closed, but I left them 4 books. Because if it wasn't for them sending me those pages, the book wouldn't exist. I'm going to stick around for another 15 or 20 minutes, and so if you want to get a book, they're, I believe, out there, and I'm happy to sign.
I just want to
them.
say one thing.
Yes.
So my book is distributed from a Canadian company, so they were out of stock here, and so we're not selling my book today. But if you are interested in my
Yes,
Kids of the
yes.
Hall book, just ask them to order it, because
Yes.
that way you're supporting independent bookstores, which I think is super important.
Yes.
And
It is on Amazon.
And well, I'm not going to mention Amazon in here, but, but you can.
Yeah, sorry. Is that a faux pas?
Well, my book's called Kids in the Hall, One Dumb Guy.
Yes,
Yeah,
and
it's
I
right there.
have my copy.
He has
right
a copy,
here.
but that's because I brought him
Right
one,
here.
and I don't have several.
And it's called One Dumb Guy because...
Oh, because the Kids in the Hall made some bad business decisions in their life, and so they all say, we're really 5 smart guys, but together we're one dumb guy.
Yeah,
So
I thought that was really great.
and when that's something that they call themselves, I would never have done it. And also, I just want to say thank you, Josh Frank,
Thank
for
you.
inviting me.
Thank you for coming.
And for doing this incredible work. And thank you all
Yeah.
for spending this out of the hot, stupid sun. You don't want to be out in the sun in here. Thank you.
Oh, I also want to thank the Booksmith so much. And I wanted to just say, Booksmith, you did not have to do this big festival outside for me today. I didn't expect.
It was a bit,
I did not.
extra,
It was a
wasn't it?
little
Yeah.
much. I hope it didn't cost you too much, but thank you. And if you hadn't done the rock band, I think we would have had more people in here, though.
Yeah, that's true.
No,
Next
but
time, no rock band.
thank you guys so much for coming. I love doing this.